what you practice grows stronger. So if you can practice, like the idea, Audrey, you're mentioning of practicing being present in your life is to kind of take some moments to pause, to slow down. Maybe just a simple mindfulness practice can be you're walking from your car to your house or your car to the preschool or your work or whatever. Maybe you can just take that time to take the phone out of your hand, just walk more slowly, breathe, and look at the area around you. And just notice how that feels. Maybe when you get into your car, you can pause and take 3 deep breaths. And there are lots of like little moments in the day that you can practice that pause. And because, all of the great advice out there, every single one starts with first pause. And to be able to do that, to be able to have that, you have to kind of build that as a muscle. And you can do that in the non-problem times, right? You can practice it before you're sitting at the dinner table, when you're in your car, when you wake up in the morning, just pause and take 3 breaths. That can be a really powerful practice.
Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, where each week we talk about ideas for raising kids who become thriving adults. I'm your host, Audrey Monkey. I'm a summer camp director, writer, and speaker, and I've had the privilege of working with thousands of children, teenagers, young adult counselors, and parents over the past 3 decades. My husband, Steve, and I are raising 5 kids who currently range in age from 15 to 25. So my interest in raising kind, optimistic, self-reliant kids who become thriving adults is personal as well as professional. In this week's episode, which is episode 117, I'm chatting with Hunter Clarke-Fields. She's the founder of the Mindful Mama podcast and the author of the brand new book, Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. Enjoy this episode. Well, today on the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, I am thrilled to have Hunter Clarke-Fields. She's the author of the brand new book, Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. Welcome to the podcast, Hunter.
Thank you so much for having me on, Audrey. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm really excited to chat with you today. You do so much in the area of mindfulness and parent coaching. Tell my listeners a little bit about you and your background.
Sure. Yeah. My work with this comes very specifically from my own life. I had struggled with ups and downs as a teen. Basically, I struggled with the downs. They came very frequently. And I started to study about mindfulness then. And I was kind of exploring different things that could help me. And then, finally, kind of a decade after that, I was able to actually sit down and practice a meditation practice. And it really, really changed my life. It made a huge impact. It gave me a lot of equanimity, able to tolerate the difficult feelings I was having that I used to get really drowned by. And so that was wonderful. And I was like, this is great. I'm going to figure out this amazing brain hack. And then I became pregnant and I thought I was going to just rock it. I was like, I'm sitting here with this meditation group. This baby is meditating with me. She's going to be so calm and peaceful. It's going to be wonderful. And it was so not that. She's a really intense kid, an intense baby. And she, kind of go figure, I had this highly sensitive mother. She was this highly sensitive baby and child. And then, the proverbial stuff really hit the fan when she was 2 and talking back to me. And my tools, I just didn't have the tools. And I started to, have my meditation practice had kind of, wobbled quite a bit in babyhood days as it does. And then as I started to see these triggers arising. So this work came from me then trying to understand what was happening, trying to understand what my anger is teaching me. What do I need to learn from this? This is the most important job in my life. How can I learn and grow from this? And I really felt like I was at the point where I was really kind of failing at this job. And the stuff I put in Raising Good Humans is really I mean, my message in many ways is like, if I could do this, you could do this, because I was in such a miserable place with it. And it really is like the how to, how I really want to give people tools on how to regulate your stress response, how to become less reactive, and how to then respond to then get more cooperation. And there's a lot of like inner work and there's a lot of outer work, but it comes from that journey. And then taking my, starting blogging and taking people along that journey with me as well. So that's it in a nutshell. I hope I answered your question.
Oh, definitely. And you have a whole podcast on this too. What's the name of your podcast?
The Mindful Mama podcast.
The Mindful Mama. Yeah, I listened to a few episodes before we chatted because I wanted to hear more about it. But so you're really deep in this. And I just want to tell you the timing of like you reaching out to me and telling me about your book was uncanny, because I am like, my personality is like the opposite of like what contributes to mindfulness. Like I'm like really like, always like ideas and like, my brain is crazy and everything. And I started using the Calm app, which is my very first dive into just trying to have a very like beginner mindfulness practice at the beginning of this month. So like 3 weeks ago. And it's been really interesting. Like I'm not good at it, but I love how in the app, it's telling me your mind's going to wander and here's how you bring it back. So, I used to be one of those people that was just like, oh, I'm just not good at this stuff, and I understand now it's like everything else. You practice it and you can get better. And in this day and age, and with all of the inputs we have and how most parents especially are struggling with the overwhelm and sort of the anxiety and the like, rush and can't turn it off. Oh my goodness, this is why you're so needed right now and your whole message in your book. So why don't you tell people about just kind of, I love how you formatted the book. So talk about how you have like part 1 and part 2 and sort of how each chapter kind of gives some really simple steps and guidance.
Sure. Yeah. And so it's part 1 and part 2, because there's basically sort of these 2 wings I see that you need to fly. And like kind of when I was really struggling, what I saw was like, there's all this wonderful advice in the parenting world that's really great, like what to say and how to communicate. But that actually is like kind of goes out the window when you're losing it because you can't access it. Like actually you literally can't access that part of your brain, that prefrontal cortex where your verbal empathetic ability is like. So there's all this inner work that goes along with it. And so the whole first half of the book is that inner work, because that's the foundation. That's what comes first. And Audrey, you said, like, I'm bad at this. Everybody's bad at it. There's actually a word in the mindfulness tradition called noble failure, because we all fail at being able to like control our monkey mind, but that's okay. That's not how you judge your practice. You kind of judge your practice and how it makes you feel and how you're able to maybe be present in the other parts of your life. So part 1 is talking about mindfulness and about unhooking from negative thoughts, about kind of looking at this. I kind of think of meditation, and mindfulness is the intentional ability to practice to stay in the present moment, right, with a sense of kindness and curiosity. And so that you can be mindful of washing the dishes or going for a walk or your child, or in the case of meditation, your breath. And so meditation is a way to practice mindfulness and kind of the gold standard. And I talk about it in chapter 1 as like a brain hack that parents need, because they've done, it literally helps you become less reactive. And we're our worst in our parenting when we're just like reacting, and we're reactive in that anger and things like that. And so we have to have a way to calm it down, not only in that moment, but we have to just build the muscle to calm or be able to be less reactive in the more peaceful times. Like this is a muscle you're building, just like, you're not going to like read about tennis and think, oh, well, now I'll go out and play the World Grand Slam. Like, you have to actually kind of do some practice and build some of that muscle memory. So this is the first part, is talking about, lowering your activity, and the studies that show that meditation practices, it's an incredible way, like completely, side effect free way of reducing your anxiety, reducing your depression, better sleep, more feelings of well-being, and then being less reactive. And then, the other parts of the first part are about these other essential pieces, which include learning about your own triggers. What are the things that really make you kind of go bananas? And learning to take care of them, learning to take care of difficult feelings in general so that we can model that for our kids. How can we expect them to be able to take care of their difficult feelings if we can't and we're not showing them how to? And then also, and very essentially, self-compassion, a whole chapter on that, because all of this work is the foundation for all of it, to be able to give ourselves that.
So one of the things that really struck me in reading this that really hit home for me, you talk a lot about how we were parented and how our own childhood impacts so much of who we are and how we parent our kids, and just to be more aware of that. And what really struck me, and I do think this is, partly a generational thing and something that parents are still struggling with, especially with boys, is I was raised where like the negative feelings were not okay. So like the tantrum was, go to your room and that kind of thing. And you really talk through that. And I think even as, a middle-aged woman, I am still coming to terms with just learning to be more aware of what I'm actually feeling, because it's not something that we were taught. There's no class in it in school. And it's something that we're finding at our camp that we're needing to do, especially with boys, helping them access, oh, I felt sad. Oh, I felt really disappointed. I felt left out. I feel lonely. I mean, these feelings are just not something that, I don't remember ever having someone like try to figure out like, why are you so angry right now? Or why are you having this tantrum? Or what is going on? And it was because nobody really knew. But I have found that that's really an important thing. And I still think even with my kids who are older, I'm still working on that with them, like trying to make it more in our family. Like, we talk about our highs and lows, and let's make sure we're not just sharing the good stuff or sharing only the positive feelings, because we've got to get, it's better out than in, as Shrek says, like you got to get those bad things like out. And even when you're a generally positive, upbeat person, there are always hard things. And so that really resonated with me when you were writing. And that's something that I've been working on for like the last 5 years, is just really trying to figure out like how I became the way I am and what are things that I need to still work on to kind of be my best self and not put stuff down all those emotions and everything. So that really resonated with me, that part. And I think it will resonate with all the parents who read this. And I want to say too, you talk a lot about like your toddlers, but now your kids are older. I think even for people like my kids are older, I don't have toddlers anymore. This still resonated with me even now with older kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think, and you're right. It's funny, like we expect our kids to kind of like turn things around and have this awareness, and we don't have it ourselves. And they have incredible BS meters for what's going on for us. And the ability of kind of like to look at and understand our feelings, it's so practical. Like it's just, and you're right. Like we were taught like, don't have these feelings, which is completely, then they pop up in awkward times. And then it feels unacceptable to have difficult feelings. And even if you're generally positive, like if you only show your kids that you show them this sort of veneer of perfection, I'm always positive, I'm always calm, I'm always there for you. Like, that's just not true. Nobody is like that. The Dalai Lama gets mad sometimes. It's kind of funny, like we can kind of give lip service to that. It's okay for you to have these feelings, but then we don't allow ourselves permission to be angry, to be frustrated, to be sad. We hide that away rather than acknowledging that within ourselves. And that piece of acknowledgement is really kind of a crucial piece to all of this work, is like acknowledging what's happening within ourselves and learning to see and understand and feel what's happening in ourselves is an incredible part of it. And it's so practical because like if you go into a situation where you're feeling upset, when you're starting to get annoyed, people ask me all the time, how do I stop losing it? And one of the best ways to stop losing it is to start to acknowledge and name your feelings earlier on in the process. Like, I'm starting to get really frustrated right now, and I'm feeling really annoyed. When you can say some of these things out loud and just label those things, it actually provides a lot of relief. And it kind of gives a heads up to people who are going, who are around you too. But it provides some relief to the stress and tension of a moment like that, Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, this is bringing up so many things, but like 3 years ago, I just had a really difficult interaction with a close family member. And we were at a hotel. I was with my whole family. And I'm not kidding, like sobbing, like so upset, like sobbing where you can't stop crying. And my kids were like consoling me. It was really sweet, and I just think that just being authentic and real with our kids is a really valuable experience, and letting them know, yes, that humanity in all of us. And, my kids were, they weren't like toddlers who were going to be traumatized by their mother losing it and being so sad. But I think it was good for them, because I do think kind of before that time, I was sort of an alone crier, like I'd kind of like, oh, I don't want to burden my kids with my hard stuff or things that I'm going through or mourning or grief. And it's really been good, because I feel like we're all closer and we can all cry together now, like, which is really good. Another memory I have, and it's going to make me almost get sad thinking about it, when our beloved dog that we had for 15 and a half years, she was just a golden retriever, and she was like part of the family and everything. And we were all gathered around her as she passed, and all of us were, crying together. And it was like so sad, but it was also just one of those moments where I was like, we were all feeling at the same time the same thing. And really, it's one of those bonding moments, of our lives, and very memorable. So I do think it's really important for parents to just recognize that and not feel that they're not enough because they're not perfectly, wonderfully calm and awesome all the time. Nobody is, like you said. And I think sometimes people think, like, probably people think you, because you have a podcast, or maybe because I'm a camp director. And as a camp director, the kids at camp, I'm not yelling at the kids at camp, and they see me as, this sort of, oh, wouldn't she be a great mom? But they haven't lived in my house. And my own kids, like, they know, like, I'm just a real human mom, just like everyone else. So I think it's really important for us as moms and as parents just to be real with each other and make sure that we all know that we all have these moments. And boy, just working on maybe having fewer of the bad ones feels so good. So I love that. So that's the whole first part of your book, is just sort of kind of focusing on ourselves, which really is, when you think about parenting in the relationship, we're the one who has to take charge, because we're the one with more experience than our child. So I love the second part too. So talk about kind of the whole theme of your second part of your book.
Well, the second part is about how to be helpful instead of how to speak in such a way that you're speaking in a skillful way, so that your child wants to cooperate with you from the inside out because they care about you, rather than because you're using power over them and making them. And I really think, having studied, I went and studied, got certified in parent effectiveness training and looking into all kinds of skillful ways of communication, I really realized that this idea that we have of adolescent kids and like it's this normal that adolescents rebel, I really think that this is not true. This is a lie that we tell ourselves, and that actually adolescents rebel against the kind of destructive communication and parenting habits that we have. Like, culturally, we're not very skillful, and it's not your fault, listener, if you're not skillful yet, because it's everywhere. We're in the soup of a very unskillful culture, of where we are constantly ordering and threatening our kids. Like 1, 2, 3 is 1, 2, 3 threaten, which is not very skillful and helpful. And some of these things feel like they like work in the short term, but if we really look at the long term, they actually make kids less likely to want to cooperate with you in the long term. And so you have to kind of use more and more power. And so what I've learned is that there are ways to speak that are actually much more helpful. And that when you start to, and it sounds so funny, like I kind of thought, like, I remember my daughter was like baby and we went for a walk and we met these new neighbors who've been my friends now for a while. And I was really kind of in a place like I was talking about parenting, struggling with it. And they said, yeah, we don't use punishment or timeouts. And I thought, oh my God, crazy. Like, what's wrong with you? And now, so if you had ever told me that I wouldn't use punishments, it's like, oh, you're crazy. Do you have your kids like rule the roost and things like that? I mean, and the truth is no, like I don't have to. I mean, there are natural consequences to some things that happen. We definitely hold boundaries, but there are ways to speak and ways to communicate and interact that create a more loving, cooperative relationship.
Oh my gosh, so much. And it's funny because, again, coming from the camp background, camp counselors can't punish kids. They'd be considered abusive. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to like tell kids you can't eat dessert. You can't use stuff like that as a camp counselor because that's not fun and that's not okay. And so that's something that I've been communicating a lot to my parents and stuff that I work with. And I love how you have on page 149, you talk about responsibilities before fun. And it's so funny because I've always called that privileges, not punishments, but I like your wording a lot. It's like, yes, there's boundaries and there's things that you need to do, but you word it in the way that, the responsibility gets done and then we can have fun. Hey, as soon as we're done doing all the laundry, we're going to play this game together, or, hey, let's get all the dishes done and then we'll go out for a walk, or, whatever it is. And it's the same idea that just as adults respond better in the workplace to being told, hey, let's meet our deadlines and get all of our project finished by Thursday afternoon. And then we'll have Friday bowling afternoon and take the office out for, even as adults, we respond better to being told we get to do something fun or have some kind of fun privilege because we did our task or met a goal or whatever. So I love that part. The thing I really want you to talk about, because I love this, was when you talked about, you say, using the friend filter. Talk about that, because that's such an easy way to think about this. So talk about how you teach that.
Well, it's interesting because we talk to our kids habitually in kind of a way that's like kind of rude, frankly. Like we expect them to be respectful, but we're a little bit disrespectful and rude to them. Like we just give them orders, right? Do this, do that, do this. And so if we think about if you had a friend staying at your house, or even if you were talking to one of your friend's children, right? Like this sort of like someone who's a little bit more removed from you, how would you ask that person? How would you make the request to that person? Someone who might have a little more removed from you. So if you had to tell a friend it's time to get ready to go and time to put on shoes, like how would you ask that friend to do it if it wasn't your child? And some kind of putting this filter on can help us look at our own language and, well, how am I asking that person? And I also think it's just so helpful to check our expectations. We have this idea, and I still find it in myself too, that we're going to make a request and our child is just going to pop up and run up and do the thing right away, and if you asked your partner to I don't know, go put his shoes away because it was bothering you or whatever, and he might say, okay, sure, I'll get him on the way out. Or if your partner asked you to do something, you might say, yeah, okay, let me just finish these pages, right? Or that I'm reading or whatever. You're not going to just jump up like a robot and do the thing. So we should stop expecting that from our children too, as well.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. That reminded me of many years ago, one of my first posts I ever wrote was called Teens Take Time. And it came from, I was having a conversation. I was driving a van full of teenage girls and just asking them, what is it that you wish your parents would do differently? And they said, many of them said that what happens is their parents say, hey, it's time for dinner, and get mad at them if they want to finish their homework or just kind of transition. And it's that same thing as a human. If I'm in the middle of something, I want to finish it before I go to my next task too. And so it was just that thought. And what I said in this post is, when you say something like, okay, kids, it's time for dinner, look at your watch when you say it. Because if you wait, it might be 2 minutes. It's hardly any time, but usually they come. If 5 seconds after you ask, you're yelling at them, come on, I told you it's time for dinner, you have not even given them that chance. And then you've created this negative vibe and everything. And it's really interesting once you start looking at time that way, that even with something like putting on your shoes or something like that, I mean, kids, like you say in your book a lot, they have a different pace than we do. And isn't that lovely? We can learn from them a lot from that pace that they have. But we are often frustrated that they're not immediately doing something. But that's more our problem. And if you want your kids to be sitting down for dinner, tell them 5 minutes before you actually need to sit down. I mean, it's more whatever, then you just announce it, knowing that if 5 minutes have gone by and they still haven't shown up, then you can say, hey guys, second reminder, it's time for dinner or whatever.
Yeah. Thank you, Audrey. I need that in my own life. I need that reminder in my own life right now. Yes, exactly. I mean, yeah, we have to kind of check our expectations. And that's what some of these resources help us do is like say, hello, okay, yes, you're right. Like, take that time, remember the pace, remember how can I speak to my child? And it's just, and a lot of these things I offer in Raising Good Humans, some of the things will be like, duh, yes. And you'll be like, oh, but it's this reminder of something that's truthful in your soul that you know is right. And then some things are things that are hard and take time to change. You might look at like I have a list of barriers to communication. You might look at those and it might take 3 weeks to say, oh, wow, look, I'm using it here and here and here and here and start to understand it before you can then go to the next step of like, well, what do I say instead? It takes us time and bit by bit change. And I think kind of circling back to that idea of self-compassion in so many ways, like why self-compassion is so important, because we're not robots either. We're not going to get it right. We're not going to be perfect all the time. We're going to be aware for a little while of what we're not doing right. And that doesn't feel good, but it's part of the process, it's part of the learning process. And we have to, if we can offer ourselves compassion, I'm learning something new. This isn't easy. It's not easy to make change. And I'm doing something good for my family, and offer ourselves kind words instead of saying something harsh and mean to ourselves. Then we'll be able to like grow and learn and make the changes that we want to make.
Oh my gosh, for sure. So not only do we need to think about how we talk to our kids, like we were talking to a friend, but how we talk to ourselves. And I think you mentioned that too, just that whole thing of, would we ever say if a friend said to us, oh my gosh, I completely lost it this morning and my kids, I was so frustrated because they were so slow. Would you say to your friend, oh my gosh, you are a terrible parent and you're not fit for this job? No, but those are kind of our self-talk. Often, we get so disappointed in ourselves especially when we're trying to do new practices. So I love how you keep circling back to that in your book, like, hey, this is not easy. Any new habit or new conversation style or communication thing, it's going to take time. So even if you incorporate, like if you lose it one fewer time that week and you use some skillful communication one or two more times, you're on the path, you're getting there. So I think I love that part of your book too, that you're not saying we're all going to be these like completely 100% peaceful, calm, mindful, wonderful, amazing parents all the time. But boy, we can take little small steps to get more to where we want to be, which I love that. Talk a little bit, Hunter, about just how, especially the end of the chapters, I love that structure. Talk about these different parts that are in every chapter.
Well, part of the work when I was doing this work, when I was really struggling, was I did a lot of studying and learning, and I really wanted to know, how do I do this? How do I do this? How? was my big question. And so I want to give people very clear instructions how to do this, what to try to incorporate into your life. So I invite people to maybe take a chapter, a couple chapters, a chapter for a week or a couple of weeks. And then I give them, maybe 4 bullet points of what to practice this week, to practice this rain meditation, practice talking to yourself more kindly, to practice seeing these communication barriers in your life, and just taking a few of these pieces and looking at them in your life so that you can take it on as a practice, because all the things that are difficult have something really, really valuable to teach us. And this is what this comes back to again, is like, what can I learn? And so I want to give people really clear guidance on how to do that.
Yeah, I loved that format. And I think it really simplifies too. And I really think, I was reading this book in getting ready to talk to you, so I read it more quickly. But I really do appreciate how it's formatted with journaling and asking people. I actually think it's better to read this book more slowly, because like you said, then you can kind of either that, or you read the whole thing and then go back and decide, okay, I'm going to start with this practice or this idea, because there's so much good in here. But again, I don't think you need to get overwhelmed with all of it, because even if you apply just one of your ideas, that I think would move the needle on kind of just raising the kind of connection and kind of peacefulness in your home. So I really, really enjoyed your book, Hunter. And I'm so appreciative of just knowing you now and knowing about your podcast and all the work that you're doing. So where can listeners find you if they want to find out about your book, where to buy it, all of that good stuff?
Sure. Everything is at mindfulmamamentor.com, and you'll find a link for the podcast and a link for the book and a link for the membership. And there's all these things there. So it's at mindfulmamamentor.com. Everything's there. And if you want to connect with me and see sort of the background of my life, I'm mostly on Instagram and that's at mindfulmamamentor. Yeah, not .com.
Yeah. Well, I think it is. I don't even know. Or it's Instagram.com/whatever. I'll put all the links in the show notes so people can find you and find more about your work. And I am now going to be a regular listener to your podcast. One final question. I should have asked this before I had you share that stuff. Do you have any suggested tools, or maybe you can share those with me and I can put links for just beginners at this practice? And I love how you distinguish between mindfulness and meditation. I guess I'm doing that calm, which is kind of breathing and more of a mindful meditation. But I really do think the main thing is the mindfulness piece, is just being more in the moment, which is to me the opposite of our distracted, sort of overwhelmed state. So I think, do you have any tools, or I'm sure you have a lot on your website? What do you recommend for beginners?
Yeah, I do have things like guided meditations. And with the book bonuses, if you go on the website on raisinggoodhumansbook.com, you can sign up for those. And I give out guided meditations there. But yeah, I guess what I want to leave the listener, leave you with is that what you practice grows stronger. So if you can practice, the idea, Audrey, you're mentioning of practicing being present in your life, is to kind of take some moments to pause, to slow down. Maybe just a simple mindfulness practice can be you're walking from your car to your house, or your car to the preschool, or your work, or whatever. Maybe you can just take that time to take the phone out of your hand, just walk more slowly, breathe, and look at the area around you. And just notice how that feels. Maybe when you get into your car, you can pause and take 3 deep breaths. And there are lots of little moments in the day that you can practice that pause. And because, all of the great advice out there, every single one starts with first pause. And to be able to do that, to be able to have that, you have to kind of build that as a muscle. And you can do that in the non-problem times, right? You can practice it before you're sitting at the dinner table, when you're in your car, when you wake up in the morning, just pause and take 3 breaths. That can be a really powerful practice.
Oh my goodness. Well, this has been so amazing. And I have many more things that I wanted to ask you about. So I think I'm going to have you back on again, if you don't mind, in 2020. We're going to have to circle back, because there were several things in my notes that I was like, oh, I wanted to ask her about that, but we already talked long enough. So thank you so much for being on today. My life has been enhanced because of your book and knowing you. So thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you, Audrey.
Wow, I really learned a lot from Hunter, and I'm excited to have her back on the podcast again next year to talk about some of the things we didn't even have a chance to get to. I really could have talked with her a lot longer. So I hope you learned a lot too. I'm going to include links, as always, in the show notes to things that we discussed, to Hunter's website, her book information, as well as her podcast. So check that out by visiting sunshine-parenting.com and search for episode 117. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, I'd really appreciate you sharing it with a friend who you think might be interested in Hunter and her work. Also, if you're a regular listener, I would love it if you took a moment to give Sunshine Parenting a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. That helps other listeners find my show. I have lots of new resources and posts on my website at Sunshine Parenting, including posts about empathy, kindness, and gratitude. If you want to make sure not to miss anything that I have going on, please subscribe to get my weekly email. You can subscribe at my website at sunshine-parenting.com, or you can text the word HAPPY to 345-345. I'd love to hear from you if you have any comments, feedback, or questions about this episode or any of my posts or my book. You can reach me at audrey@sunshine-parenting.com. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey to raise a generation of kids who become thriving adults.